Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Mark, and I'm the Director of Label Member Relations at A2IM. Welcome to Indie Week 2021. I am incredibly excited to jump in today's panel because it's really such an important topic, understanding, representing, and elevating the voices that are the future of this industry. I'm very honored to be joined by some outstanding figures from our community today. You know, A2IM worked very hard when putting this panel together to not only maintain a sense of diversity, that's something we always incorporate into our programming, but to make sure we were really providing a vast array of views from all different facets of the industry. So we've got a really nice range amongst us today. We've got speakers from all different areas of the independent space, and I really look forward to getting into some great conversation with everyone about what the future of our industry looks like and what we're responsible for and what we can do to help and support others who are looking to break in and make it. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you all to my incredible fellow panelists, and I'm just going to ask everyone to give us a brief introduction of who they are, what they do, the company they come from, and their background in the music industry. From there, we'll jump right into things. So Fotemah, you are the first person to the right of me, so why don't you kick things off for us?
I kind of had a feeling you were going to call on me. I was like, you might call on me first. But hello, everyone. It's great to see everyone on here, and it's great to see that everybody's in good health and great spirits. My name is Fotemah. I'm the head of A&R for the Cinq Music Group. In my role, I oversee a plethora of artists. I was brought into building the general side of the label. Most people that know sync music, our bread and butter came from the Latin space. My background, most people know me from convict music, Akon, and helping to develop that whole brand as well, and discovering some pretty key songwriters in the music business as well. And that's a short about me. And again, smile. Yes, yes.
All right, Kim, you want to go next?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Kim Umanoff, and I am the General Counsel and Chief Operating Officer of Blue Elan Records. We are an indie label based out of Los Angeles, a relatively new label. We are celebrating our, I think, 7th anniversary this year. And I have been with the label pretty much since inception. I had a bit of a different career trajectory, probably than most, into the music space. I started off my career as a lawyer, not practicing in music at all. I didn't go to law school to be a music attorney. I started doing commercial litigation and just found myself naturally gravitating towards the entertainment space and really interested in particular in music. And then was really lucky that about 3 or 4 years into my legal career, one of the main partners I was working for decided to start a label. So he started Blue Elan, and I got in kind of on the ground floor. And just realized after working there for a couple years and juggling both positions that my passion was really in the music space, and it was a lot more fun than my day-to-day legal career. So made the transition and have been full-time at the label for about 5 years now, where I handle obviously all the legal spectrum and the whole legal side of things, but also the financial aspects, the HR aspects, and sort of the general overview of just running a small business. So happy to be with you all today.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. Very cool to hear about your background. Daslyn, you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Daslyn. I'm a project manager and producer at YouTooCanWoo, which is an independent artist-owned music and audio production studio here in Brooklyn, New York. The studio is also the home to independent record label Toucan Sounds, which focuses on emerging sounds and artists. I've been here for about 3 years now. This month is actually my 3-year anniversary, so I'm a little bit new to the music industry, and I maneuvered my way here after a few internships after college with an interest in music, having a background as a classical violinist. I knew that I wanted to be involved with music as a career, and so I kind of maneuvered my way in here and fell in love with project management.
That's awesome. All right, and last up, Maya.
Hi everyone. I work at Stone's Throw Records, which is an independent label with offices in LA and London, and it's celebrating 25 years this year. And I've worked at Stone's Throw as label manager for outside the US in Europe and Australia and the UK for about 4 or 5 years. And before that, I worked for a very boutique label services company, one of whose clients was Stones Throw. So in some capacity or another, I've been working with Stones Throw about 8 years. I started in the music industry in my mid-20s. I joined this boutique company as a label assistant and just carried on working there. And yeah, Stones Throw is a growing label, and it's been really exciting sort of being part of that growth over the last 8 years or so.
Great. Thank you, Maya. All right, so guys, let's get started. I thought it would be interesting for us to kind of take a step back and take a look at the industry and where it's at now versus when we all first entered it. And, since we've got a whole different group of people here, that's going to range anywhere from like 5 to 20 plus years ago. So what are some of the largest differences that you've noticed that have really had an impact on all of our roles? What have we had to grow and adapt to maintain relevance within this space? And, what are some of the challenges that have come along with that?
I think sort of the most obvious ones are just the emerging technologies and the continued dominance of streaming. I think we find ourselves constantly trying to learn and incorporate new platforms, whether it be a new social media tool or just changes that are constantly happening amongst the various streaming platforms. I think the stat was last year streaming grew another 18% and was over 60% of the total global recorded music market in 2020. So it's certainly going to be a continued focus and something that we have to continue to grow with as the streaming ecosystem continues to grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think independent labels have always had to be resourceful and flexible, but I think that's really come to the fore in the last, I can only comment on my own experience, 8 to 10 years, with, like you say, the rise of streaming, the emergence of new technologies, new platforms at every turn. It's also, for a vinyl-focused label like Stones Throw, it's while there's been a sort of worldwide trend in physical decline, decline in physical sales, it's been really reassuring to know that there's still a really strong audience for physical music that will continue to buy music as well as stream it.
Yeah. Definitely. And you mentioned the rise of the UGC platforms, and are you guys finding those are more beneficial to your business? Are you guys able to create, new and unique approaches to hit different fans there? Is it harder to stand out for some of your artists? How's the best way that you're utilizing all of that? I will call on somebody if you guys make me.
I can speak to some things going on there. So in the UGC space, we've seen that it can really help invigorate catalog, not even old catalog particularly. We have one artist who had a song go completely viral on TikTok a couple of years ago. And it was quite an unexpected song to do that. It's a pretty out there track. And I think one of the interesting things that's been going on, especially with TikTok, is that some really left and interesting music is going viral on there. And yeah, it was a really interesting experience working out how to leverage that outside of that space onto DSPs, for example.
Yeah. And Tomas, so I was going to say you're an A&R. Have you been utilizing any new AI trends? How have your practices changed from either seeking out new talent, working with the existing talent that you already have? I feel like your role is probably one of the largest that has been impacted, to be honest.
Yeah, the role has definitely has been one of the largest impacted. I feel like, when you say A&R, we had a specific focus a few years ago. And now I feel like as an A&R, we tend to have to really dive into every aspect of the business. You find yourself being, sometimes your own A&R admin because, some of the younger people coming in, they're kind of new in the business. you find yourself being an attorney sometimes when you're not an attorney, pretty much negotiating the paperwork before it gets to the actual attorney, whereby before it's like, I want to sign this artist, send it over to legal, they're going to handle it. And I was like, oh no, these are the deal terms, let's work with this. So those are some of the changes, I think. But another change that I've seen, which has worked to our advantage, is that if we had a pandemic years ago, I feel like the music industry would have completely suffered and shut down. So streaming really worked to our advantage. But also as A&Rs, it was like, this is the most work I've ever had to do in my life, because you have artists that are dropping records because they don't have the income coming from touring. Now they're like dropping records every 2 weeks. It's like coming back to back. So those are some of the changes that I've seen, in the business from back then to now. And just to add to that, when it comes to streaming and in emerging markets, it's making it easier for them to break their talent in our market now. So, those are some of the changes that I've seen throughout the years.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, data probably plays a much larger role in your day-to-day than it must have prior, right? Like you used to just go to 5, 6 shows a night, take all of that information in, figure out what sounded great to your ear, move forward with that. Now I'm assuming you're utilizing charts, different other ways to understand all of the streaming
Absolutely.
metrics and their social followings and all of these other new digital factors that come into play when you're looking to really put money and time into developing an artist.
Absolutely. And as an A&R, you try to have a competitive edge. And AI is really taking over, but also sticking to your guts on some things that numbers. They say numbers lie. I feel like sometimes numbers do lie. You might get an artist that has these huge numbers, and then when you put out the music, it does not translate. And that's where your gut has to come into play. So I feel like we're getting back to a place in music now where, yes, when it comes to looking for talent, you can, use your different methods of looking for it, but that gut feeling is coming back where A&Rs are really gonna have to really A&R now, get in the trenches with the artist, go to I used to go to the studio and dance with my artist and try to outdance them. And I feel like that's coming back. I'm not doing that anymore, but yeah, but that's coming back.
Great.
I have
And
to add,
you mentioned, oh, go for it.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to add, because legal services and lawyers were kind of called out there. But I thought in the last couple years in particular, there's been sort of a different change in the legal landscape, I guess, and how artists are approaching their deals with labels. And sort of a shift from going to a label and having it be your one stop and having them really take over every aspect of your career, to artists looking for individual label services and more piecemeal deals, looking for single product licenses as opposed to this robust 360 recording contract that used to be the norm. So I'm seeing a lot of artists come and look for, one company to do distribution on the digital side, another company just to handle vinyl, wanting to hire their own PR teams, their own marketing teams, and really to farm it out and be very selective of who they're working with and who they're giving which specific rights to, as opposed to just finding one home to do everything.
That's a
Sure.
great point. Yes. I see that every day. Yes. That's a huge change. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to go to you next, Kim, because when I was just, prepping for this panel this week, I was reading an article that you had done an interview on, and you were talking about how one of the biggest things that you focused on when you came over to Blue Elan was taking these 150-page contracts that an artist can just easily, get so lost in and sign on something that they have absolutely no idea about. And, something that Blue Elan really worked towards was providing artist transparency. Is that a general trend, do you think, that we're moving towards as well, really making sure that we are taking the artist into consideration, not just exploiting them, making sure they are part of the developmental process, they have an understanding of what's going on, and they're kind of steering their career a little bit more than the traditional way we would think of 20 years ago or something?
Absolutely. And I hope that labels like us who are trying to make the process more transparent and offer, a recording contract that our artists can read and understand and digest, and it's not 100 pages, are putting pressure on more of like the majors to do the same thing. As you mentioned, when we first started the label, we took sort of a standard recording contract that was given to us by a very well-respected music attorney, and it was 110 pages. It was complete legal jargon. And we redlined the hell out of it and got it down. I think our standard contract now is between 10 and 12 pages. We took out a lot of the label protections because those had to be taken out to get it down to something manageable. But we wanted our artists to be in a partnership with us where they understood exactly what they were signing over, where they felt like we had skin in the game too, and where they felt like they could read their contract without even a lawyer. Obviously, I would always advise them to have a lawyer look over it, but understand and talk to us in kind of plain English about what was in the contract. So I think that there's definitely been a shift of a lot of indie labels offering those sort of deals and offering just more artist friendly deals in general, which has put pressure on the entire industry to sort of meet the indies there and be competitive by also offering the same things. And as soon as the indies sort of did this, and a lot of companies made sure to, really educate their artists on the business ramifications of the deal, and that became more robust across the scene. I think the artists just had more agency and understood their rights, understood the business aspects. They're starting to just become more involved in all of the back end and want to make sure that they know what they're signing over and know all the legal ramifications, and are signing deals that don't sign away their masters for life of copyright, and just have more agency and control over their entire career trajectory. So I think that's been a really positive trend that's continuing.
Yeah, I really like seeing that we're moving towards more artist transparency. I have noticed that across quite a bunch of labels that I've spoken with. And Daslyn, I was curious if you could tell us a little bit more about YouTooCanWoo's overall. I think you guys have a very modern business approach, right? Like you have the sub label, you have the recording studio, you also do advertisements. Was that kind of construed from looking at the traditional model that we see for a record label and kind of trying to modernize it to include other elements that you felt weren't, necessarily there in the traditional label sense that we think of?
Absolutely. I think one of the best parts about the company is that it's artist owned. So, like, two brothers, Robert, who's the head of the label now, and David, who owns the studio, they were French Horn Rebellion. So they toured, released music on other labels, and then came together to form the studio several years ago. And so a lot of the artists we do work with have a lot of autonomy, and I think that's a beautiful thing of the label. We focus a lot on like the creative community aspect of it. So not even just artists on our label or label imprints, but also the people we work with in studio on different creative works for the production studio. A lot of people we work with are, people who are playing in French Horn Rebellion, but also are helping out with creative work in the studio for different clients that are, producers or directors and, ad agencies and smaller artistic and creative companies that we work with. So I do think that when we founded Toucan Sounds in 2019, it's still pretty new and fresh, that was a big focus for us. How can we approach newer artists and emerging artists and make them feel comfortable working with a smaller label that, is just getting started, but we have this legacy with artists who are pretty, well known within the independent industry, especially localized here in Brooklyn.
That's great. All right, so I want to jump over. So, historically, the music industry is one of the hardest sectors to break into for so many varying reasons. Access to internships, low-paying job in exchange for like cool benefits like free drinks or tickets to shows and so on. Lack of diversity and representation in general. How do you guys feel we're doing right now? Do you feel we've made progress as an industry to become a more inclusive and inviting environment, to those who are looking to develop a career in this field? What have we accomplished so far? What is left for us to tackle? I mean, I know those are loaded questions because there's so much on both ends.
Honestly, I feel that we haven't come a long way when it comes to creating opportunities in the business, because it's one of those, it's not like you just go to college to get in the medical field. And after that, you go fill out a bunch of applications and boom, oh, you got a job. You know, and then it's such a competitive business. Like I think it's even worse now because everybody wants to be in the music business some way, some form, somehow. So I don't feel like it's gotten better, but I do feel that the efforts being put into mentoring the next generation of talent is definitely much better than when I was coming up. You're seeing a lot more internship opportunities, and you're seeing a lot more interns being able to rise through the ranks. You know, whereby in some cases back in the days it was a relationship thing. So a lot of people are able now to really like earn their way up into the business, but I don't think it's much has really changed. I think if anything, it might have gotten a little bit um, worse from when I was coming. That's just from my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel so far removed from that process of trying to break into the industry. So I'd say it's pretty difficult, probably still, to get your foot in the door. And I think that's where most of the opportunities come from because it's not something like a lot more traditional jobs where you know where to look for them and you know the people to network with. Like after school, after college, I knew I wanted to get into music, but I had no idea how. Like I studied music, none of my advisors in school knew anything about the music industry, so I was kind of on my own. And I played like the LinkedIn networking game just to network with like-minded people, other people in the industry, and it was really uncomfortable and really awkward. But I think eventually, when I got my first internship working with United for Opportunity in Manhattan several years ago, that's really where I was able to explore more in the independent music industry and was able to get my foot in that door because I was meeting more people who were already in the industry. And I feel like that accessibility isn't easily attainable for just anyone until you actually get there. So I think I was really lucky with that. And that kind of opened the doors to more opportunities that led me to where I am now. And that's one thing I tried to keep in mind, like over the past years when hiring interns and working with different interns. I try to be like compassionate and understanding, like, I know this is difficult and you want to break into the music industry and it's really difficult to do so, especially coming out of college and no experience and no connections to anyone in these companies or in the industry. So I try to like give them, resources that I had access to at that time to take a little bit of the burden off for them. Um, so I hope that helps a little bit. I know probably as of last summer with like a lot of the support with like the Black Lives Matter movements, I think more companies are trying now to be more mindful of representation and how they build the structure of their company with the people that they have and make sure that they're not just, talking a big game, but also hiring people that reflect these views.
Now,
Yeah.
you know what has gotten better is breaking the news to your parents that you want to be in the music business.
For sure.
I feel like that part has gotten a little bit better with the newer generation because when I had to break it to my parents, especially being African, till today, my mom was like, "So what do you do again?" You know, I'm in
Well, you're
marketing.
also you're the son of a diplomat and an educator, right? So I mean, I'm sure that's like way above their heads at that point, especially
Way
coming
above
from
their head.
Cameroon.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think, what you noted about internships is so important. And I think some of the largest work that we still have to do there is opening up all of those opportunities, right? Because at the end of the day, I still think that any type of college level educated, sophomore or junior is just naturally going to be chosen first and foremost over somebody who doesn't have the same educational experience. And, I think personally at A2IM, when we're looking to bring on interns or anybody really, we don't necessarily look for the music industry background that you have. Like if somebody worked at Dunkin' Donuts for 2 years and they held a job down for 2 years and they went up and had a management experience there, that is still equally telling and means something. So I think we really have to expand the way that we look at candidates, and we need to make sure that those opportunities are available for everyone. I will also say that, unpaid internships just doesn't cut it. I was very fortunate and lucky enough that my parents live right outside of the city. So when I came home from college in the summer, I was able to easily commute into the city for absolutely no pay for, I think I did 3 years worth of internships. And a lot of people don't have that same opportunity. So I think it's really about reevaluating what the responsibility is that we as independent labels and companies in this space have as well. If we can't necessarily afford to pay an intern, maybe we need to reevaluate internally on how our budget is going and make sure that is a priority for us as well, because it means that we're helping to implement that change moving forward.
Yeah, I strong agree there. I started reasonably, I don't want to say late, but I started my career in music later than I would have liked, purely because I graduated into an economic crash. And, there were very few jobs at the time anywhere, let alone, exciting jobs in the independent music industry. But I think you touched on a really valuable point there, which is also kind of geography. There are only a few cities, whether it's in the US or, well, in the UK, there's really like a couple that have sort of thriving job opportunities for young people wanting to get into the industry. And I'm sure A2IM makes efforts in this area as well. But in the UK, AIM is doing something really exciting with regional champions to make sure that diversity also means, diversity around the country. And I think that's really valuable. And I think programs and initiatives like that are really going to be beneficial in the long term to kind of getting us a music industry that's not concentrated in a handful of cities.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one of the positives of COVID has shown that, we all have the ability to do remote work. So I think a lot of those opportunities are finally being expanded for the first year, where if we have somebody in a little bit more of a rural place, they can still commit like a 20-hour week online and help support and gain that, experience. Just had a total mind blank there.
I also think there's this gap in knowledge, I was going to say, about sort of the different job opportunities in the music space and in the business side. There's always this focus sort of on the artist and the more like sexy piece of the front of house and not necessarily the business back end. So I think we need to do a better job as an industry of just educating people about and celebrating the people that are behind the scenes and all those different types of roles. So to start to try to do this, last year my label launched this pilot program called Take Note, which was a multi-part series that was a live streamed event because of the pandemic that was aimed at just educating underserved youth mainly about the different type of job opportunities available and the career trajectories in the music industry. So we really took, I think the first series was maybe 6 parts. And during each segment, we just took a different job opportunity and sort of broke down what that role entailed and tried to provide the basic fundamental understanding of the business of music, which a lot of people just don't have any sort of access to or any sort of basic understanding of. So providing, I think, that foundational insight of all the different job opportunities in the industry was pretty illuminating to kids who never even considered it as a career option.
Yeah, definitely. One of the next talking points that I had down actually was addressing just that. When you first entered the industry, did you know what you wanted to do? Did you have an understanding of all the different roles that were available? I 100% did not. And I first started out at a major label, and I joined right when like social media was becoming really big. I think Instagram had like just launched. It was 2011, and I came on as a social coordinator. And I had no idea what that was, but it was just the first job that was available to me. It was entry level. It required a very like youthful oriented position, if you will. And I kind of took that and dove in. And I found out very quickly that I hate social media and that this is absolutely not the job for me. And I think that was one of the biggest struggles that I faced over the next like 5 to 7 years of my career, because I kind of got stuck in this digital marketing area. And digital marketing is like far from my passion in comparison to other facets of the industry. And one of the biggest things that I really struggled with was kind of breaking out of that norm and working to kind of craft my role to get it to where I wanted it to be today. Did you guys have to go through anything similar? Did you find yourself starting off in somewhere where you really wanted to be somewhere else, and you had the opportunity to morph your role a little bit more into what you actually wanted it to encompass?
Um, I started off managing and developing talent. So my story is kind of like left field a little bit. So, but I was friends with Akon. And so when you're good friends with someone and they finally blow up, I remember he called from Amsterdam, said he wanted to meet with me. He came back and he's like, hey, I see the talent that you've been developing and the writers that you've been finding and producers and artists. I want you to be the A&R for Convict Music. And I'm like, what is the A&R? And because in my mind, I'm like, this is my guy. I want a title. Give me president, vice president, general manager. And here come this guy's talking about, I want you to build out the A&R department. I don't want to A&R, nah, bruh. So then he said, listen, just go research it out, look at it, and then come back and give me an answer. So I said, okay. I went and did my research. And the first name that popped up was Diddy. I called him back. I said, about that A&R position that you were talking about, I want to do that. And so that's how I kind of morphed into a role of being an A&R. But when I first got in it, I didn't know what in the world I was doing it, but I didn't know that it was an actual job description per se. I was just doing what I love. So that's how my journey kind of like morphed into being, morphed into coming up in the business.
Yeah, cool. And what support were you guys given as you grew your career? Were there certain people or companies or other resources that you utilized to help elevate yourself to where you are right now? Anything that we can really recommend for anybody who's watching, who's still at the very entry level aspect of their career?
For me, it was my peers in the industry, a lot of whom I connected with via networks like A2IM and AIM. I found, as as I encountered certain difficulties, it was just so helpful to have the support of my peers in the industry. Mentorship schemes are also great. I had a great mentor for a while, and she came with a really different perspective because she worked in a sort of quite high level position at a major label, which has never been a career path I particularly want to take because I love the independent industry, but it was so valuable hearing her perspectives. So I think look within your immediate circles, but also look outside them because you might be surprised by the insight you can get from there.
Yeah, for sure. And it really is so important to utilize the networks that are available to you. And I think that's also on the company to make sure that all of their employees know about it. I was at a company that was part of A2IM, and I had absolutely no idea about it. And I didn't know about the conference and the mentoring opportunities. And the onus is really on those employee executives as well to make sure that we're getting that information and that knowledge out, because the A2IM mentorship program is one of the most valuable benefits of being part of the organization, hands down. The people that we have who are involved in that every year, who give their time out every month, it's just, I cannot say enough positive things. And crafting those relationships, like we said, we are in such a relationship oriented facet of the industry. It really does help you to grow. Um, so I want to hear a little. We do have a few people on here who are in a little bit more of leadership oriented positions. Moving up there, being in a decision maker role, if you will, what has that taught you, both personally and professionally? I would love to hear a little bit more about the way that you lead, and the type of mentorship that you offer, and how you work with your team that you manage.
I'd say one of the biggest realizations, I guess, that I had is just how different and disparate working styles really impact the entire team, and how important it is, especially when you have different personalities, to try to foster open and clear communication and just get everyone in the mindset of overly communicating on everything, making sure everyone feels empowered in their job, everyone feels like they have opportunities to be heard. And that just doesn't happen organically most of the time. You have to put some strategic planning into that. And I would also say that I've had sort of the opportunity to reflect on just how important teamwork is, especially in creative spaces, and how important it is to assemble a team who works really well together. I'd say the best ideas that we've come up with always come out of these collaborative Friday meetings that our entire team has. Everyone who works for the company comes to these meetings, and we just have all staff brainstorming sessions where we just sort of riff on an idea or talk about a specific artist or a specific project, and there's sort of no bad ideas, and having those open dialogues where people aren't afraid to say something that could be stupid, really come up with the best plans and the best ideas that we've had thus far.
Yeah, sure. And if we look back at some of the most successful companies in our industry, I mean, all of us included in this chat right now, a lot of us are now being led by traditionally younger executives than, I think we used to see in the norm 15, 20 years ago. Why do you guys feel that having young voices like all of ours in the room is so important for company success and health?
I mean, I think it's, as we've been saying the whole time, emerging technologies are something we really need to keep our eyes on. It's something younger people are just more adaptable to, I guess. I think there's also, something to be said for having, I can't speak for everyone here, but if you're trying to have people of all ages, engage with your artists, be their fans, go to their shows and buy their music, it certainly helps to have people of, all adult ages working in the company, and, recognizing what audiences do and how they respond. And I think younger people can see through kind of fakery. I think they understand authenticity really well. And I think it's just really helpful to have that perspective. And also young people are cool. They know cool stuff. We all want to be cool, so.
I totally agree with all of that. And yes, I think just the longer you've been doing something, the easier it is to become, entrenched in doing it and looking at it a certain way. But our industry is obviously evolving so quickly and requires companies to be nimble and pivot all the time. So having younger executives that, haven't been performing that task for 15 years in the same way are better able to sometimes think outside the box and sort of reinvent new strategies.
Yeah. And, I think we also have a different set of priorities than our predecessors may have sometimes. We grew up in a very accepting and encompassing culture, and those are elements that are very important to us. And while they may be acknowledged and recognized by higher ups, the level to where they actually go to implement them may be very different than our approaches. So I think just, kind of having that backing behind us and showing the level of importance in implementing some of those changes in diversity and inclusion that we mentioned before, I really think that comes from a younger voice, to be completely honest.
Completely agree.
All right, so we're getting the 5-minute rundown soon, so I've got a couple more things we'll try to cover. We mentioned earlier about wanting to work in the independent space, and I'm curious what you guys feel differentiates this area of the industry from other areas that really contributes to employee happiness and success. And, why do you guys like being indie above all else?
I think for me, I love the flexibility of working at an indie label, especially in a leadership position, whereby when we're at Convict and we're distributed through Def Jam. Oh my God, getting ready for those meetings was like crazy. And then also being in a room where you have A&Rs, the competition. I feel like the indie scene is a little bit more friendly. It's a little bit more family oriented. It's not as it's competitive, but it doesn't have that kind of competitive edge that just ruins your month, ruins your year. Trying to always look over your back like, oh my God, I know they liked the song in the meeting, but did they go back and say they hated the song and X my artist out? We don't have to deal with that in the indie space. I like the indie space because it gives a lot more opportunity to artists that wouldn't normally get the opportunity, especially the indie space now. Like the indie space now is like you can actually compete with the majors. You can have an artist that's on an indie label who's selling way more than an artist on a major label and making more money. So I love the the indie scene, and I also love the organization within the indie scene, like the Aims and the Merlins, all these different things that just help to promote and push. I feel like the indie scene is like the youth in the business, a lot more energy and just ready to just you know conquer anything that's out there that everybody say no, you can't do that. It's like we're the first ones to be like, really? Yeah, that's it for me.
We are very tactile.
And I'd have to agree. I don't think I came into the independent sector purposely. I just wanted to break into music and happened to end up working in independent music. But I do agree that there is this friendlier atmosphere about it and this more collaborative spirit. Like especially with A2IM, it's really nice to go to events and reconnect with old bosses from previous internships from when I first started. And also to build on the point you made about more opportunities for artists, I do agree with that. And there's also more opportunity, I think, with people working in these companies just because you're able to wear more hats and actually feel like you're making a difference and collaborate with the people that you're working with. And I think that's especially true with working with such a young label that we're constantly growing ourselves personally and professionally, but also we're working together to grow this label together. And create more opportunities for the artists that we work with, which is really exciting and fun.
I think Daslyn has made all the points I was going to make. The only thing I would add is that even with a I don't want to say older label, but a label that's been in the game a bit longer, there's still lots of dynamic, exciting things going on. So it's still always changing and evolving, which is really just refreshing. And yeah, like you were saying, the roles I think are much more flexible and challenging. You're kind of at the front line, you're interfacing directly with artists and collaborating with them in a way that I just don't think happens in the major world. And this is a personal thing, but I just think the music is better. And we're all in this because we love the music. So yeah, at least from my point of view.
We do have the best music, 100%. I agree, though. I think being independent, aside from the importance of owning your masters and being able to give that opportunity to artists, I think that we are generally small teams for the most part. We are afforded such a unique hands-on approach to the work that we take. And I feel that you really have an opportunity to put your name on something and to grow yourself within your organization. And I don't necessarily see all of that mirrored in other facets of the industry. So I really do feel that we are unique to some of those elements. And everything that everybody else mentioned, they're also all the same reasons that I love being part of the independent network. Like I've worked at a DSP, I've worked at a major label, and this is by far the chillest that it's ever been. Not to say that the workload is any less; it's probably more than I've ever had before. But just the freedoms, the flexibilities, and I think, the rewards that come along with that, the self-satisfaction that comes along with seeing a project that you really had such a specific part in getting out there, I think it's incomparable. All right, so that I think just about wraps it up. We got the 30-second warning. So guys, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the next generation. Really such a pleasure to chat with you all. You're incredible figures, and I look forward to seeing you at the concert. Conference. Let's edit that out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All.